I've got a really strong affinity with India. We honeymooned there. I just have a sense. I like Indian people. I have a bias in favour of them. If I have a bias, what do I like about them? I like the fact that their culture is very similar to Anglo-Australian culture in a sense. They were multicultural long before we were. India is like Australia, one of the great democracies of the world. In fact, India is the largest democracy in the world. And I like I like people's deep sense of culture and history in India. So one of the things that I looked at when I was in India, it comes back to this point, is how does a country go about the liberalisation of its economy? In Australia it happened because there were people like Milton Friedman who came here sponsored by business people, sponsored by think tanks like the Centre for Independent Studies, sponsored by cross-party groups like Crossroads that came here from the 1970s and started to talk about liberal economics in Australia, classical liberal economics. And it made me think about a place like India, which has major economic challenges to bring so many of its people into the real economy, and Prime Minister Modi has started that process very well. But there's so much more that needs to be done. But the challenge for him is India's in that group of countries that won't be able to go through a large-scale manufacturing thing if the technology's jumped.
Yep.
So the question is, how do you change a mindset in a country like India about economic reform, where the downsides of economic reform to the voting base are quite large? The downsides of economic reform to Bob Hawke's voting base were potentially very large too.
This is why I admire what I agree were not extensive reform, labour market reform, but they were significant. And he may have had a lot of capital to burn, but it still happened. In India, being ethnically Indian and seeing some of the progress on the Indian side of politics, it is very, very difficult to enact change.
But you've got all of these effectively subsistence farmers in inefficient agriculture, who it's in India's long-term interest. It's in Australia's interest that India liberalise its markets more.
Yeah.
But the political cost of doing that is massive, absolutely massive.
And Modi has found a way to encourage people to understand that change will be good for them.
Yes.
In a way. It has come with some costs, I think, particularly in the sort of pro-Hindu view. And so some of the minorities in India are now starting to be a little bit uncomfortable around some of these reform programs. But I think he is selling a message in a, if I can use the phrase, rather Trumpian way in India to try and get change happening.
Well, Modi's done kind of four key things. Firstly, he said India's open for business, and
we've just signed a free trade agreement with India. Yeah.
No, we Australia hasn't.
We're about to.
No, I don't think we.
We're not going to.
No, I don't think that's anywhere on the offing.
Right.
Australia would love to sign a free trade agreement with India, but India is not necessarily interested in free trade. It's one of they're interested in foreign investment, but they don't. They want to get the Indian line is they want to get their industries to a point that they can compete with us, and then look at free trade. But their interest is foreign investment. So he said India's open for business. It's open to investment. It's have another look at India. That's been really important. He's created a national ID system which has brought people into the formal economy. He's given everybody bank accounts, which again has brought people into the formal economy, and he's created a mobile economy. He's given people mobile phones. And this has put India, it's been India's, great step of progress into a formal economy.
Can you imagine implementing a policy program like that in Australia?
It's just extraordinary.
Or in the Western world.
And you're talking, billion people here that have got things. I mean, even some of the sort of what was described to me as public provision of private goods. Giving people gas in their homes and so on. I mean, just the rollout of that would be massive. And in Australia, you get all the scandals about this hasn't worked and that hasn't worked and so on.
Yeah.
In India, they've done it, I think, through big data, through lots of Indian expats coming home to be part of, from people who've had time in the States and in Europe, coming home to be part of the delivery of these services. And that's been really, really fascinating. The challenge for India now is to take to go from having taken its first steps into the formal economy into a period of greater economic liberalisation to bring the rest of the economy with it. But there's a big downside cost to it. And I think that's the challenge of economic reform.